Hi bakers, I'm Sally, and today I'm showing you how to make a towering chocolate chip layer cake with sweet whipped chocolate chip buttercream and a rich chocolate ganache drip on top. This cake has real showstopper appeal, but is completely doable in your home kitchen. Let's get started. The first step is to get started on our dry ingredients. I have cake flour here, and we're going to add baking powder, baking soda, and salt. To keep the cake nice and light and soft, I recommend cake flour instead of all-purpose flour. Whisk that until everything is combined, and we'll set it aside and work on our wet ingredients. For the wet ingredients, we're going to start with creaming butter and sugar together until it's light and fluffy. This will be a nice base for our super soft cake. Creaming will only take a couple minutes on high speed. Once those are creamed and combined, add 5 egg whites. You'll want to skip the egg yolks here because that's just gonna weigh the crumb down. Beat these together on high speed until they're combined, usually about 2 minutes. Ooh, this looks nice. Okay, after that, we'll add sour cream for some tender moisture, a nice buttery moist crumb in this cake, and then vanilla extract for flavor. Again on high speed until those ingredients come together. I'm going to scrape down the sides and up the bottom of the bowl to make sure we have every last bit. Beat again, and that's good. We'll add our dry ingredients now. Turn the mixer on low speed and slowly pour in whole milk. I stick with whole milk here. It will soften the cake's texture. A nice, smooth, velvety crumb. Once that's all added, continue mixing on low until it is all combined. Avoid over mixing. That looks good. And we will fold the chocolate chips in by hand. First, let's scrape down the sides. Set that aside. For the chocolate chips, I recommend mini chocolate chips so you get more in each bite. Toss those with a little flour. The flour will help prevent them from sinking in the cake layers. Let's pour those in, very gently fold those in. You want to avoid over mixing. Stop mixing these once they're all evenly distributed in the batter. Our cake batter is ready. Now it's time to prepare our cake pans. So I have 3 8-inch cake pans here. This is the best size for this 3-layer cake. And I'm going to line them with parchment paper rounds. I cut these myself just from a sheet of parchment paper, and I use the bottom of the cake pan to trace it. And I cut them out. To grease, we can use some nonstick spray, or you can use butter. We'll spray the pans as well as the parchment to really create a nice nonstick environment for the cake so they seamlessly release from the pan. Put these in there, fit nicely, and spray those one more time. I'm going to divide this cake batter evenly. I'm just gonna eyeball it. You can use a food scale if you want. Lots of chocolate chips. I'm going to smooth out the tops. I'm using an offset spatula for this. These will take about 25 minutes to bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. If your oven has hot spots, you may want to rotate the pans and switch their positions halfway through baking to make sure they bake evenly. If the tops are browning too quickly, tent them with aluminum foil. After baking, the center should be slightly domed and the edges will be lightly browned and slightly pulling away from the sides of the pan. To test for doneness, you can lightly poke the center with your finger. If it bounces back, you'll know the cakes are done. Let these cakes cool in the cake pans for 1 hour, then you can remove them and place them directly on the cooling rack. Make sure they cool completely before you assemble the cake. Now let's make the whipped chocolate chip buttercream. Start with your butter, and we will beat it until it's nice and creamy on medium speed, about 2 minutes. If the butter is stuck on the paddle attachment, grab a spatula and scrape it off. Scrape down those sides and beat again. You want it nice and smooth before we add the remaining ingredients. All right, let's do that once more. And then we'll add some of the rest of the ingredients. Confectioner's sugar. This will not only sweeten the buttercream, but keep it nice and thick. Heavy cream. I'm just gonna help give it that light consistency, vanilla, and a little bit of salt. Let's start it on low speed and then we'll bring it up to high speed to kind of avoid a powdered sugar explosion. Once it's nice and mixed, you can turn it up. That looks good. We're going to beat it until it's light and fluffy on high speed, about 4 minutes. That looks good. Now we can fold in the chocolate chips. Scrape down those sides. This makes a nice generous amount for our 3-layer cake. Mini chocolate chips. I'm going to fold these in. You can also just leave this on the mixer and beat them in. These cakes are slightly domed on top, so we'll want to level them off to create a nice flat surface, which will make for a very sturdy layer cake. For this, you can use a special cake leveling tool. I'm just going to use a serrated knife. We'll just very carefully and slowly slice off that domed top. And you can discard this, save it. You can use it as crumble on top of the finished cake. Let's assemble. Place one right flat on top in the center. You can use a cake turntable or you can just use a cake stand. And I'm going to use about a cup of buttercream between each layer. To spread, I'm using a small offset spatula, spreading it all the way to the edges. Okay, next layer, I'm going to place it upside down so the top layer has a nice flat surface to sit on. That looks good. Let's make sure it's nice and even. Another cup of buttercream, and same thing, just spread it all around. Okay, final layer. Going to place it right side up so it's nice and curved on top. I always like that look. That looks nice and level and even. Now let's add the rest of the frosting. This will be a little thicker than a crumb coat layer. We're not going to do a traditional crumb coat for this cake because of the chocolate chips and the buttercream. They would make it very difficult to spread the frosting in a thin layer. For frosting around the sides, I'm going to switch to a large flat spatula. The size just makes it a little easier to get all the way up those edges. A bench scraper would not be ideal for the sides because it would just drag the chocolate chips. So I'm just using a real light touch around the sides. This looks great. It needs to refrigerate for at least 20 minutes. You want a nice cold cake for the chocolate ganache drip. All it is 2 simple ingredients, chopped chocolate and warm heavy cream. Stir it until smooth and then we'll transfer it to a squeeze bottle. I made this ganache in a liquid measuring cup just to make pouring really easy. Once the cake has chilled, we can add the warm ganache drip. I'm going to go around the sides in a zigzag motion, and the cold cake, the cold frosting, will prevent the ganache from getting all the way down to the bottom. You'll want to work fairly quickly because the ganache will cool and harden in the squeeze bottle. For the rest, I'm just going to squeeze it all on top and we'll spread it to the edges. That's another reason why you want to work quickly, because when it's all warm like this, it will blend together seamlessly. This is done, but before slicing, refrigerate it for at least 20 minutes to set the ganache. After that, for an optional garnish, you can add fresh berries, some chocolate chips, or even piped buttercream. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you feel inspired to try a new baking recipe today. Head over to my website for the full written recipe and all of my success tips. You can also ask a question right there on the recipe page, and my team and I will be happy to answer.